Hello, Paul. Welcome to this Fireside chat conversation. We're very happy today to have you. We're going to go through a lot of things today, collaboration, what is a BIM, what is the buildings industry. But first, could you introduce yourself? Let us know who you are and what is Arcol.
Yeah, totally. So I'm Paulo Carroll, CEO and founder of Arcol. At Arcol, we're creating what we're calling Figma for BIM, or kind of Figma for building designers. So that's what we're creating.
And what is a BIM?
That's a good question. There's many arguments over that. BIM model is the idea of a building with data behind it, effectively. So it's a model of a 3D building.
Okay. And could you tell us, like, when it comes to Arcol, like, who's the persona, like, who's the typical user that you're going to have, and what problem do you solve with Arcol for them?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're building a tool for everybody in our industry. Our industry is called the AEC industry. It's architecture, engineering, and construction. And really, we're building a tool for anybody that touches the kind of building design process. That's architects, engineers, and then kind of latter stage contractors. In the very beginning, we're focusing pretty heavily on architects. And the problem that architects have in their current lives is these tools are pretty arcane. The main tool they use is 20 plus years old. It's still desktop based. It's not exactly performant or collaborative. And our thesis, much like Figma's was, which was take these tools natively to the browser, rethink them with kind of 21st century design principles, and kind of build quote unquote beautiful product, and have them be natively collaborative. Because at its core, architecture is a design process, and our thesis is that design is a thing not done by one person but done by many. And if that thesis is true, then surely those tools should kind of embody that too.
Yeah. And I'm curious about you too. What is your, like, how did you end up in the BIM industry? Like, what's your relationship with construction, with that? Are you an architect?
I'm definitely not an architect, unfortunately. I've got a long and kind of windy path into architecture. So, for background, my father's an architect. I wrote about this in our manifesto. I wrote this manifesto a while ago, which kind of talked through the Arcol story. My father's an architect. I grew up on construction sites. I'd be sitting under his table as he's sketching out this building, seeing this kind of idea coming into fruition on literally pen and paper, and then go into site, 6 or 7 months later, and see this mound of steel and timber and glass, literally erect from the floor. And this is somebody's home. This is a space they're going to live in. And that was just very practically an idea in his head 6 months before that. And that to me was just, as a kid, the most magical and beautiful experience. And then, I started learning programming. I was a game developer for a long time, built a relatively successful design studio where we kind of built design tools for large Fortune 500 companies. Through that, started working a lot more with my father. I kind of noticed, looking backwards, that all the tools we created were architecture related in some way. I kind of got exposure to the current design tools we use in architecture and realized that it's not magical. It's not beautiful like I thought it was. So I decided to create Arcol, which when I first thought of it many years ago was Google Docs for architecture. I saw the evolution of tools like Figma and thought that is what needs to happen in our industry. So we're creating Figma for BIM. I want to kind of quote unquote bring the magic back to buildings, bring that feeling I felt as a kid back to architecture.
Oh, that's very inspiring, very exciting. And like, maybe for people that watch this video, like building a building, like BIM, all that it's like, I think we all get the concept. We see in our neighborhood like a building going from the bottom to the top. But could you tell us, like, maybe describe some feature that we have in Arcol, some valuable thing that we can find in your product, if we go into more the feature, so that we can maybe visualize exactly what you do and what you offer?
Yeah, we're building a building design tool. And what that means is kind of the both parts of the process of creating a building, whether that be kind of early stage massing, kind of creating the form of what that building should look like, and then converting that to what we call a BIM model, kind of a breakdown of walls and windows and doors, and kind of the buildup of those walls and how they connect together, and effectively how's this building going to be constructed. And so we need to build all those feature sets, which is a lot. All the kind of underlying organic geometry feature sets, to enable the curvy organic geometry or kind of buildings we see some of the kind of large architects do, and also just the kind of really basic commercial buildings that we see. Create the documentation feature sets for those. So not only kind of build a 3D piece of geometry, also convert that into a series of views that you put onto sheets, which you'll give to your contractor eventually to build it. So we got to build every feature set that allows an architect to design a building, whether that's kind of physically drawing walls, windows, doors, or doing more kind of like conceptual massing kind of things.
And I remember last time we talked, you showed me like we'll show videos of your product with this conversation, but you showed me like the concept of sheets, and I found that amazing that it's supposed to replicate like the sheet of paper that people would print out, but it's always real time in real time update with like what we have in the 3D plan.
Yeah, so Revit, the current tool set that is used in the industry, kind of created this, or kind of was formalize it around this idea of parametric sheets. Before, going back to my father, you'd physically draw out a wall and a window and door on a plan view. You then create an elevation. You got to redraw that wall, window, and door, and in all sides of the building to explain to the contractor how to build it, how all the pieces connect together. If you wanted to change the position of one of those doors, you'd have to like manually go and rub out all the pieces of paper and redraw it. CAD then introduced that into a kind of doing that process instead of having to spill coffee on your piece of paper you do on the computer. And Revit's power was really that you model once and it kind of parametric, or it kind of creates these views for you. You kind of change things once in the model and it does it for you. Our view of things is that we're in the browser. So all this kind of work that you do over email, instead of kind of creating this sheet set, a PDF that you will send to your contractor or your kind of design principal in your firm and be emailing revisions back and forth, you do that in one place in a link, because we're natively browser based. So that's just one of the kind of really cool things we're doing, kind of enabling a more interesting revision process with kind of our version of sheet sets. But it's a pretty small part of the process. There's a lot of interesting geometry stuff to build also.
Yeah. And you also mentioned that you are addressing one of the most complex, like technological part, like building that in a browser. Like, just to get an idea, when we build when we build a building, I don't know if that's correct to say, but when we build a building, how many components in your file do you have? Like, is it just like a few? Is it a lot of different components that people needs to manage?
Yeah, I mean, think of the building you're in right now. You got walls, you got doors, you got windows, you got floors and ceilings, and there's all the studs and the makeup of those walls, and they connect together. I mean, buildings are really complex, and we're just kind of talking, on a really small kind of residential kind of space. You can imagine that extending to stuff like skyscrapers. We've got hundreds of thousands of square feet of intricate kind of building. So it's a complicated graphics problem, partly because we got to put those buildings in the browser performantly at scale and enable users to collaborate on them in real time. Also a complicated problem because we got to build the underlying geometry kernel that drives that geometry. It allows you to physically model all that stuff and kind of do the complicated algorithms underneath to loft and sweep and revolve. So there's a lot. You can have hundreds of thousands of components in a large scale building.
Wow, that's impressive. And just before you talk about like the single source of truth, which is like you send a link and people go there and they always have the last version, which is now become a commodity when you think about like Google Doc, Figma and all that. But like for your industry, that's a game changer. So I'm curious about what's the role played by collaboration in Arcol. How much collaborative features do you have, and what does it bring to your users?
Yeah, I mean, the collaboration is really a core part of our thesis, and it, again, in our manifesto we wrote about this a little bit, but the idea is that collaboration is really and is becoming table stakes in all major design tools. So collaboration is this new kind of innovative feature that kind of creators of tools should be shouting from the rooftops. It is going to be in every tool, and in Arcol, you can see people's cursor moving around, and if they move a wall, you can see the wall moving. Kind of, you feel like you're kind of creating and collaborating on this space together, much like if you were physically beside somebody sketching on a piece of paper. That idea of presence and feeling like you're collaborating with somebody, especially because it's a design-oriented field, collaboration is super core. It's really, really important.
And that brings me to my next question, like trying to get to Liveblocks a little bit. But so like you're saying, it's core to your business collaboration, but you're using Liveblocks to do so. So you're outsourcing this effort to another company. Could you tell us why? What was the thinking behind, and why did you choose Liveblocks in the end?
Yeah, I think it was, we saw the evolution of tools like Figma and this thesis that everything is going to be consolidated and be real time over time. If that is true, then we shouldn't have to make it ourselves. There should be tools and services that enable it for us. It is a really core part to our product, but it's not kind of an interesting net new feature set for architects. It should be table stakes. So when we kind of came to that decision, it was, should we really be spending a bunch of dev time building our own CRDT solution, or there's a bunch of other people already doing it? And we researched pretty heavily, and we made a decision to go with Liveblocks and rely on everything for Liveblocks. Partly because we met the team and we just really enjoyed working together, and then partly because they're so stable and amazing Liveblocks is.
Thank you. Very happy to hear that. And when you work with the Liveblocks team, so I know we have a Slack channel together where like the team is able to ask a lot of questions. Can you tell us like how is your experience with the Liveblocks team so far?
I think so. We rely on a bunch of platforms and kind of services like Liveblocks to enable Arcol to be built. I think Liveblocks is the only one that we have in our Slack channel, and that to me is like really important. Relationships are incredibly important, and the ability for us just to like literally send a Slack message and get an answer from the team has been it's been really amazing, and it's been a core reason why I've been excited to work with you guys still.
Well, I think Arcol is going to be pretty successful, so I really doubt that we're going to be the only one for a long time in your Slack channel, but I hope you'll have some great companies. But we're very proud to have you, and like all the questions that you asked, that you have team asked so far, has really helped us also get the product better. We've made a lot of changes thanks to the feedback that we received, so that's a two-way, that was beneficial to everyone, I think. So that's great.
Totally.
On my side, I think that covers everything I wanted to discuss about Arcol and Liveblocks. Is there anything you'd like to add? A last word about Arcol, collaboration, whatever you want, Liveblocks?
No, I said, if you're following Arcol, we recently launched in closed beta. We're still incredibly early in this story of killing the current design tools. Although if you are interested in architecture, feel free to join our waitlist. We recently went over 15,000 people. We'll be starting to open up product more publicly later this year. And really the power of being browser-based is that we can open the floodgates to architecture. You shouldn't have to be a licensed and trained architect to design a building. And that building won't get constructed because you're not an architect. You can't kind of license or put your stamp on it. But there's a lot of spaces where environments need to be designed. And so I hope people get use out of it over time. And again, if you are interested, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or my email address if you've got questions.
Okay, so best way to reach out to you is to follow you on Twitter, your Arcol account, and maybe LinkedIn, depending on who. I don't know. Are you on LinkedIn?
I love LinkedIn. I'm all over LinkedIn. That or email me directly. My email is paul@arcol.io.
Okay,
I'm awesome. Irish, so I'm happy to chat your ear off with anything.
That's awesome. Thank you very much for your time, Paul. That was insightful conversation. I love what you do with Arcol. It's a beautiful product, and I think this industry had to change, and I think you're doing an amazing job at that. Thank you for your time, and have a great day, and talk to you soon.
Appreciate it. Talk soon.
Thank you.